Hello. Today is October 13th, 2025. I'm meeting today with Mr. James Ronk at his home in Lafayette, Colorado. My name is Brad Hoops. I'm the interviewer for Remember and Honor Veterans History Project. Welcome, Jim, and thanks for sitting down today to tell your story.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you for doing this.
My pleasure. Let's start out, if we could. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your date of birth, where you're born, a little about your family and early life.
I was born on April 8th, 1948 in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I was the second of 9 children, 6 of whom are alive today. Had a wonderful childhood. We had lots of football and baseball and basketball. It was very much of a Catholic community. Faith was an extremely important part of my parents' life. I viewed those values. I went to a Roman Catholic seminary for 3 years. I had an older brother who went 6 years. My family is still close. I talk to 2 of my siblings today, and nothing special about today. We just want to stay in touch. My dad was a World War II veteran. He was wounded in Italy. And
did he ever talk much about his experience?
Yeah, to some extent. We weren't always that interested. And now we wish that we had, okay? But he's been gone many years, and my mom was a breast cancer victim, and she died young. So my dad did a lot of raising of the family. Like I said, I was second of 9, and so when my mother passed, my youngest brother was just starting kindergarten.
And how old were you at the...
I was 20 years old when my mom passed, so being at the older end, that was fine. Went to University of Wisconsin, Madison. Okay, that was real good. Wound up. My career was medical products, and I started out as a sales rep selling medical products.
Was this out of college, or was this post-military?
This was what I had done. Is I had messed up, and I got drafted after my sophomore year. Okay, I wasn't making proportionate progress. Okay, I needed 90 credits, and I only had 77 at that time. Okay, and the good news is I had a very, very favorable draft number. The bad news, I was already in the service. But I got a lot out of the service. Like I said, my career was medical products, and I started off working in an emergency room in Fort Hood, Texas.
Well, let's back up all the way back. How long after? So you got drafted. How long after you got your draft notice did you take off for basic then?
I would say it was probably about a month or 2.
Oh boy, yeah.
Okay. And
where did you do your basic training?
Did basic training at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Okay, and then what they called AIT was at Fort Sam Houston, which is the medical place. And what I really loved was the excitement of the emergency room, and I enjoyed working with the doctors and the nurses. What I felt is that I was learning a new way of thinking. You know, I'd say, well, why don't we just operate? And they said, well, no, that's too invasive, you know. let's try and do some laboratory tests. And I said, oh, that makes sense, you know.
Well, once again, I'm going to back up. Two questions. One I always like to ask is, how was that transition for you going from civilian life into military life? Was that much of an adjustment for you?
Well, I was probably drinking too much beer for a while. And when I went, I mean, I just loved basic training.
Oh, did you?
Okay.
It was easy for you? And
I mean, I'd gone up to 191 pounds, I remember, at the weigh-in, and I didn't need to be at 191 pounds. So the exercise and the early marching and all this was good for me, okay?
Okay.
And I really enjoyed that. I remember I went in on September 9th, 1969, and so it was right at the beginning of the fall, you know, just on the cusp of the fall season. And marching as the sun came up, I mean, I can still remember those warm feelings and so forth. And being, you know, I'd been somewhat athletic, you know.
Oh, okay.
And being, you know, getting back into you know, better shape and so forth was good. It was real good. I needed to do that. Okay. Then.
Well, so then after basic, take us through how you got into the medical side of things. Is it something that you had a background in, got tested in, was just thrown in? How did you end up in medical?
That's a good question, Brad. I know I scored real well on the vocabulary, and that's the only thing, you know, you do these different tests. And perhaps that was an indicator, or it was pure random. I don't know. Okay. They just said, here's where you're going. and so you know, the training, you know, it was a 10-week training session. Okay. At Fort Sam Houston, and then we took a bus up to Fort Hood, and I was there until about July of 1970, and then got orders to go to Germany, and went over to Germany, and that was more, wasn't the emergency room, it was more, you know, the bases over there are much smaller, okay, and there were only about 4,000 people, so there wasn't clinical work that there was at Fort Sam Houston, because Fort Sam Houston is a big base, okay. Fort Hood is a very big base, and it was also a favorable place for retirees. Killeen, Texas is right next door, and modest cost of living and favorable climate and so forth. And so we were much, much busier in the emergency room than we were in the clinics. When I was it was in the Bavaria section of Germany, a town called Ulm, is across the river, and we were in New Ulm, N-E-U, new word, ULM. And so then.
How was it like for a Wisconsin boy overseas? Probably, I'm sure it was your first time overseas. What was that like for a?
I felt gratitude because I remember seeing a news clip about London, and I said, "Wow, you know, people actually get to go over there sometime," and I never had.
Yeah,
you know, okay,
right.
And so I had a bit of a travel desire, and over the course of long weekends and in the clinic, they let you work back-to-back shifts and, you know, build up 4-day weekends and so forth. And so I was able to see 10 countries in the time that I was over there. And then I applied for an early out because at that time manpower requirements were on the decline. As 1971, we weren't at the peak of the Vietnam experience, so people were applying for and being granted early out. So I got an 86-day early out, okay, which was very convenient because I had to come back for a wedding anyway. And I remember I was coming back into the offices, and someone said, "Your early out came through, Jim." And I said, "But I got to know exactly how many days, because otherwise I would have had to go over to the U.S., stand up in this wedding, and come back." But the timing was so fortuitous that I was able to get back into the country on Wednesday to stand up for this wedding on Friday. And someone, a dear friend, who I texted this morning, because I needed his insights into the Green Bay Packers, okay? Victory yesterday, okay, which wasn't as good as it could have been. But, what I got out of it, and what I got into medical products, okay? And I started out as a sales rep, and my medical background helped, but when I got back, I still needed to finish my degree, okay? And so I was able to use the GI Bill, and the state of Wisconsin was also giving us unemployment, okay? So I was getting $300 a month, okay, between the two. And I was back at the University of Wisconsin, and it was, between being able to see these different countries and getting the GI financial benefits, okay, and then learning some medicine, okay, really helped. So I then started with a small medical company that was based in Racine, Wisconsin. And I was out in California because my girlfriend and I had moved out to California after college, okay? We graduated at the same time. And the president of the company and I just got along real well from day one, okay? And what I loved learning every day in medicine, and we had clinically intensive products, and that was so beneficial. And he was promoting me every year and so forth, and that was great. Eventually, he sold the company to Bristol Myers Squibb. He went off and did some other things. I stayed on with the company, and then I went and worked for a company called Hollister, and then he and I got back together, and we co-owned a company. It was a turnaround situation. It was a company that was losing $1 million a year, and the only thing you're doing in those cases is betting on yourself. And so we turned it around. We built up the sales, cut the expenses, protected the employees, and at the end, we had our choice on who to sell it to, and we chose the right people, okay? And that worked out real well. He passed away a few years ago. He was older, he passed away. He was 17 years older than I did, and he let me run the company. It was more of a silent partner at that stage, but we remained dear friends. In 42 years, we never had an argument. Okay, we did. And a lot of people would say that was people who had really successful careers said they just didn't have as much fun as we did. Okay,
outstanding.
I felt real lucky. So looking back, the benefits of my time in the service were I mean, these were important, okay? I mean, I got to see, go and spend 2 weeks in Italy, 2 weeks in the UK, got to Paris on a long weekend, went to Belgium and, of course, Germany and, France and Italy and all told 10 different countries. And I got a lot out of that. And that helped me academically, because I remember in courses say, well, let's compare the U.S. experience to what's going on in other Western civilization countries and so forth. That was really good. And then having developed a bit of a mentality to start thinking in medically responsible ways, okay? That worked out. Then during the time, I also picked up an MBA, which was very beneficial. And the company said, well, don't worry about your grades and don't worry about anything, just give me the invoice every quarter. And so I was clearly a beneficiary of that. So I got an undergraduate degree and a graduate degree with zero debt, okay?
Nice. Oh, very good.
Right. It was easier back then, but it was still, expensive, except the company picked up the tab and I didn't have to worry about that. I was a vice president at that time and, a young daughter and so forth. Along the way, when I was in San Francisco, I met Anna, my wife. I knew the day I met her I was going to marry her, okay? We got married in 1978, okay? So we've now been married 47 years, and we have one daughter, and that daughter got married 10 years ago. They are expecting their first child this Saturday. Okay?
Oh, wow.
Okay, she met a wonderful guy. She did real well. So we have one child, and we are hoping for one grandchild coming up real soon. Okay, she's done well. She went to Northwestern undergraduate. She went to Harvard Law School. She clerked for a federal judge for 1 year in Green Bay, Wisconsin, where she met this other young lawyer at a young lawyer social, okay? After a couple of years, they got married, okay? They were in Wisconsin. They said, we would prefer to live in Denver, okay? And so they did. We had, we had a nice house there. We lived in Illinois at this time, and we were there for 27 years, and we said we wanted to be a bigger part in the life of our daughter and son-in-law, and so we sold that, came out here, and we're glad we did.
Oh, wow. So how long have you been here in Colorado then?
So we moved here in 2018. We bought this lot, which was captive by the builder. He said, well, if I sell you the lot, I'm going to build the house, all right? And so we rented in Erie, which we enjoyed for several months while this house was being built. We moved into this house in 2019, okay? And we have wonderful neighbors all around and so forth. What I try and do is I try and stay physically active. The culture here is very conducive to that. I can't drink any beer, okay? Because that's not. I needed to do a correction on that, okay, which I did 40 years ago. Now I'm in an over 70 softball league, okay?
Really, huh?
Okay. Last year we played 41 games, okay? We play double hitters on Monday mornings, okay? Play golf in the nice weather 3 or 4 times a month, okay? And I walk at least 5 to 8 miles just about every day, okay? I was just on that path until about 10 to 3 when I said I better get back for Brad. So,
Outstanding.
yeah.
So how long, altogether, career-wise, how many years were you in the medical industry then?
So I started in '78, and I left the company. After we sold it, I did the handoff, and I retired in 2016. We sold it in 2014, and left at the end of March 2016. So.
Wow, good, what, 38 years in the industry?
Like that. Yeah, yeah. My first job in San Francisco was selling, consumer products. Calling on the grocery stores, and selling household items. Things like wool.
So you started out in California. It was a Wisconsin-based company, and then came back with that company, or what? Excuse me. What brought you back to the Midwest then?
Okay, so I was out in San Francisco, and my partner was very good at correcting mistakes, and they had made. They introduced 6 products at the same time, okay? And they all flopped, okay? And he said, we've got to do more research with the clinicians before we launch all these products. So he said, why don't you come back to Racine, Wisconsin, which is where the company was headquartered. I came back, the specific title was Product Research Manager. And then in a few months they said, we're going to put you in charge of the sales force, okay? And I did the sales force for a little less than 4.5 years, and then I had a chance to go work for Hollister, which was my first opportunity at general management. It was taking over a company taking over 4 small businesses which were losing a collective $3 million a year. I was a little intimidated about taking something over like that. But like I said, I never had a boss that trusted me with running any business that was actually making money. And so we turned that around. We wound up making money off that, okay? And then when Dave and I, about 1999, we got involved with this kit packing business with clean rooms and all that business called Medicmark. What we did there, we both put money in. He put more money in than I did, okay? And then I owe so much to him because it's a typical situation, where you get a bigger chunk, as time goes on if you're performing, okay? If you're not performing, the business goes down the tubes.
Yeah.
And so we did that, and he was very generous with my family and myself. And he had made a lot of money, okay? Particularly with his first home run was when he sold our first company, Surgitech, to Bristol Myers Squibb, and then he made a lot more when he went off on something else. But he was a turnaround guy. That got my juices going. I thought that'd be a lot of fun. And you're trying to build up the sales, and with my sales background, that was a natural place for me to look. And then like we said, in terms of expenses, one place to start is just stop doing the really stupid stuff. And and pretty soon you're generating some cash, and you can do things. So it just worked out. Okay, it was real different. Big influence on my life, and he passed away a couple of years ago. I think of him. I think of my dad. Like I said, my dad. I want to talk about my parents a little bit.
Yeah, please.
Like I said, my dad, small farm, just a classic, small farm, born in 1921. By the time he was old enough, he realized there was a depression going on. First of the family. And the relatives to go to college. Okay, went to St. Norbert College in West De Pere, Wisconsin. ROTC. Wound up going over to Italy, getting shot up. Okay, spent a lot of time in hospitals. He suffered. Some of those were permanent injuries and so forth. Came back, and for so long he just said, "I'm the luckiest guy in the world." Okay, met mom again, Catholic family. A story that I like. My grandfather peddled moonshine. Okay, and in order to make that happen, he first went to his wife's mother and asked permission, about doing this. And then Grandma was concerned about, is this ethical? And went to the priest. And the priest said, "You got to do what you got to do." But Mom and her parents were close, and that was important. So as kids, we went to mass every day, and a lot of times in summer we were really the only kids in church, going to daily mass and so forth. And it was that environment that really led my older brother first to go to Sacred Heart Seminary, and then I did. I found after 3 years that I just thought the church was just too conservative for me. I wasn't all in on it.
Yeah,
Okay?
sure.
And so that was the right decision for me, and the right decision for my brother. He left after 6 years, but he was always a great older brother. One of the reasons I was interested in sports is because he would, let me play ball, whether it was football or basketball or baseball, play with his friends, okay, particularly baseball and football. He was a good athlete. And that was a big part of our identity. And, young boys form friendships through athletics and so on. And I would say one of the most lasting aspects of our seminary life, because we were there, full time, okay, in the dormitories. Some of my absolute closest friends in life are, from those high school days,
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did room with one of my seminary friends at Madison, okay, but by and large, most of my dearest friends from those high school, college years were from my high school years, okay? And that's a good part of, what I'm grateful for, real nice friendships, okay? People, we get together every year where people come in from outside the country, and we get up to Green Bay and we see a Packer game and we golf. Okay. So, we've done that for several years. Unfortunately, there are some who are no longer with us, or they've got some Alzheimer's problems and are institutionalized, or another one can't make the trip anymore because his wife's got some significant health issues and so forth. And so our group of 8 is down to a group of 4, okay? But that's life, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay?
Well, looking back on your dad's World War II experience and how it affected him, usually it's like a pebble in a pond. The rings go out. How do you think? Do you think it played at all in your life? The way he was, the way how it affected his life. Did it go on to affect you and your siblings' lives in a good or bad way? Do you think?
When he said,
Or not at all, maybe.
when he said dinner's at 5:40, that did not mean dinner is at 5:41. Dinner was at 5:40, okay? And he said he's an old army man, okay? He used that phrase many, many times. And he believed in organization, and he believed in discipline. I would say his faith was a bigger driver than a carryover of his military days. But he was proud of that. I would say his thinking evolved a little bit, and that is that he did not want a military funeral or anything at that stage, because he did not want a legacy of glorifying war. He tells the story of him being up on a hill, getting really pelted away at the Germans, because the Germans were at the top of the hill in a strategic advantageous place, and looking out over the Mediterranean and said, such spectacular beauty in this war. You know, war is nuts, okay? But I would say that he believed in discipline. He believed in order, okay? He believed in work ethic, I mean, those values. I would say he would speak more of the military. I mean, he was one of 200 who survived. There were 200 in the unit, and someone came along and said, oh, this one's still breathing, okay? And then he got operated on in a cornfield, okay? And then put on a ship, and he said the big Red Cross was just enormous, the symbol of the Red Cross. And then he had hearing loss, okay, and went to the point of going through reading lips, okay, but he wound up, some hearing was restored, okay. He later on in life, we were at this point living in Illinois, and we went back to one of the VA hospitals, VA Hines, where he had been, 40 or 50 years earlier, okay? And, it was, of course, completely different and so forth, okay? I remember his teeth were, shed, all the concussive forces around him and so forth. I remember him from Green Bay driving down to Fort Sheridan because he could get free dental work. Otherwise, it would have cost a fortune. And he did those kinds of things. So he pretty much would say believed in a strong military. People like Penn and Eisenhower, would much more of his political persuasion and so forth. My mother, mother of 9 children, okay, died at 44 years old with breast cancer, okay.
Were you in the military when she passed? Or, oh, okay, you're still.
It was close, okay. And she said, Ray, who's going to take care of my children? And that was a big motivator for Dad. Dad, Steve was just about entering kindergarten. Patty and Lori were just a couple years, a year or two older than that. But it was a community where the neighborhood ladies were extremely helpful, okay? Watching, kindergarten was half a day, so who would take care of Steve the other half, okay? And Steve's been gone since 1981, but this year we got a note from Nancy Trainer and said, I was in the grocery store today and I bought white grapes because it was Steve's birthday, and she remembered that Steve loved white grapes. And that's this is 2025, and Steve was gone. That was the kind of neighborhood.
Wow.
There were 53 kids on our block, okay? Birth control was not a big big deal, Like we said, my sister Jeannie said median, she exaggerates a little bit, but she said median family size was 11, Green Bay at the time was 85% Catholic. Birth control was not popular, okay? The church, if you were a regular member, it was $2 a week, but if you had anyone in school, you should be charged. You should contribute an extra $1 a week, okay? And we had, for years, we had four kids in the parochial school at the same time, so $1 a week was pretty reasonable tuition,
Well, you talked about earlier about your dad and his thoughts on not glorifying war and everything he went through. Did you guys ever have a conversation, or did he have any concern when you got drafted? Because it was a crapshoot. You could have been drafted and sent off to Vietnam, and did you guys ever have a discussion about, and maybe any advice he gave you or anything before you went off to?
Well, the concern was that my older brother and I had gotten drafted the same day.
Oh, jeez.
Okay. And then that was in September. We got inducted in September of 1969, and then my younger brother, who didn't go to college at all, he got drafted in February of 1970. So we had 3 of us there at the same time.
Oh, man.
Now, Michael, but none of us wound up in Vietnam. Michael was a medical policeman, but he had an operation, but everyone else from his unit went to Vietnam, but he had an operation, and so he wound up in Fort Devens, Massachusetts. My brother Mark had orders, okay, to go to Vietnam, but that got changed, okay, and he wound up in Germany the same time I was in Germany.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so we got together, but it had to work. Did he ever say, "Geez, I'm really worried"? No, I don't recall him saying that, except he must have. He must have been. But
And your poor mom with three kids.
Yeah.
3 boys, boy. Oh.
Yeah. she had died just
that's right.
prior to
Yeah.
us going into service.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So, but Dad was proud of his military, service. Okay, and it was. He would talk a little bit about. He said, "Boy, that's when you give someone an order to go do something, and they know how risky it is, and they follow you." He said, "That's respect." Okay. That meant a lot. So he was he had a lot of respect for what his Army experience. I would say he never complained a lot, okay, about his injuries, but I remember one time we were at a basketball game and he ran into someone and they were talking during the game, but Dad said, "Let's change positions so that I can hear you out of my good ear," to carry on the conversation. Yeah. So it was that, and that ringing in the ear. He said that was constant, and I remember seeing the scars from his that wasn't exactly plastic surgeons operating in the cornfield, in the tent in the cornfield, but that was life,
Yeah, right.
But this, I mentioned this recently. If I could speak again in my father's wake, what I would do is I would take those chapters and say, okay, very poor farm, okay, dairy farm, but no central heating or anything like this, no indoor plumbing or anything like that. And then, working the fields, he said he and this other guy were the only guys who had read every single book in the library, okay? There probably weren't 100,000 volumes, going to college, the military experience, coming back, buying a house in suburbia, raising a family, those were just such classic.
A chunk of it as a single father. I mean, life wasn't easy for him.
Yeah. And but driven a lot by a real deep faith.
Yeah, right.
And I say we're a dot on a dot on a dot. Okay, I remember him saying that many, many, many times. Okay, and he's so convinced that that this is just a passing experience and nothing compared to eternity.
And you picked up those philosophies as well from him then, do you?
Yeah, you do. You just can't help it.
Yeah.
I don't think we're as religious as he was, okay? But I don't know if that's too important either.
Yeah. Through the years, have you been able to, particularly in the retirement years, able to travel back to Europe and trace some of your old steps at all, or?
I'm not. Well, my wife grew up in Italy till she was 12 years old.
Oh, okay.
So we have been back many, many times. Okay. In fact, our daughter and our son-in-law and Nan and I have been back together 5 different times. Okay. Anna has a sister who has always lived over in Italy. Okay, the rules were she was too old by the time they got their papers to come over. She's legal, okay? But I've never been back to the old barracks or anything like that. And I wouldn't mind it. If there's anything I regret, I wish we had taken Dad back to Anzio.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Okay, we never did. And I wish we might have had to overcome some.
Do you think he would have gone?
Well, I think I think he would have.
Yeah.
Okay. He had talked about, he never went back to Europe. He talked about going over with Mom, but
Yeah.
ran out of time.
And he never remarried?
No,
Wow.
no. He was a widower for just under 25 years. And but in a lot of ways, there was just nothing to beat the fiber of the greatest generation.
Yeah.
I mean, those people. I got a history degree, and I really believe that the industrial production of the American workforce was so critical for beating Hitler. And these guys were on the farm, okay, and they developed mechanical skills and mechanical aptitude. And when they went into the factories, they could produce a plane a week, or whatever the statistics are, okay? Today, I would say, if they really need an Excel spreadsheet, I could do that. But put together a plane, I know, the manufacturing skills that those people had from being 3 years old at their dad in the field when the machinery broke down, and how they sure weren't going to call some service to come out into the field. They had to fix it themselves, okay? And they did, and they learned how to do that, and then they applied those skills, and so we were able to, as a country, as an economy, produce, the uniforms and the bombs and the airplanes and the ships at remarkable speed and effectiveness, and it made the difference.
Yeah. Now, I don't know how many World War II veterans I've talked to that said, I give the credit back home to the home front and what they did.
Oh, really?
Oh, well, so many of them. And you talk about the home front production, but it was also, I've read many reports about how out on the front lines, when something would break down, they could fix it and get it back going again, whereas opposed to the Germans or the Russians, whatever, they just abandoned it and moved on, and so you've got a very good point there for sure. Yeah.
Oh, that is interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh.
Yeah. Now you had mentioned that many of your good friends or childhood friends and high school friends. How about in the military? Did you guys keep in touch with anybody through the years that you served with? Was there any sort of reunions, or was it just too short of a period to really develop a?
I have had almost nothing in follow-up, okay? I remember being in Madison, people coming up and stuff like that. And there were some other people, but I just haven't done that, okay?
Yeah.
You get busy, and I think about guys like Jack Schreiber, and his Phillies and Camden, New Jersey, and so forth. But I just never have. Okay. And I don't know. let me ask you, do you think that, I get the impression it isn't all that widespread that people really stay that much in touch, or am I completely wrong?
I think it's a little bit of both. And I think it seems like it develops years later. Like you said, you got out of the service and you get going in a career, and then you get raised in a family, and that's what you're consumed with. And then it seems like it's been over as years go on. Then you start reconnecting, and then, certainly the internet and such has made it a lot easier to do that. But
Yeah.
a little bit of both.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
When I went on the honor flight.
Yes, that was my next question. Talk a little bit about that. You just recently, last month, went on that.
Well, that was an extraordinary experience, okay? And, when you pull into the parking lot at 6:30 on Sunday morning, and some woman comes up and says, "Sir, may I carry your bags?" Okay? And she is the deputy chief of police for the town of Erie, okay? Oh, okay. Then you walk up and they say, "How about some free coffee?" And then you wait in a real short line, and they say, "Here's a bag, and there's some food in there to hold you over until you get service on the airplane." And the whole theme was welcome home, because I really didn't feel very welcome coming back in Vietnam. I got out in 1971, and we didn't feel welcome.
Right,
okay?
sure.
Society made a mistake, when the anti-war feeling got transcribed onto the individual soldiers, and society later corrected that, but that was wrong, okay? The 19-year-old high school graduate, he wasn't making policy in Washington, D.C. And what he did is he respected the law, and the law said, if we draft you, you're coming, okay? And that's not a thing even against the people who went to Canada or anything, because those were well-intentioned people too. Some people were scammers, okay? The war was so unpopular that those feelings got laid onto the soldiers.
Yeah.
So what I loved about the honor flight was this was 180 degrees different. This was welcome home. Mm-hmm. And the language that was being used by from A to Z was welcome home, okay? And I said, wow, this is nice, we're really being treated. And there were maybe about 4 or 5 times where I was really completely caught off guard about how my emotional reaction was, wow, there's so many wonderful people, so many, the goodness of the American people, okay? We have a divided society politically, but there are, my Facebook write-up was that there's the goodness in so many Americans, okay? I mean, it's true, human beings in general, but certainly I wanted to just say about Americans, because that was the focus here. Where you're greeted when someone's saying, "May I take your bag?" and when you're leaving on Monday night on the way to the parking lot, and these ladies are giving out individual quilts, okay? I said, wow, or when my buddy Ladd said, I don't think I could handle the steps. And there's a wheelchair, and the guy, at the Lincoln Memorial, said, it's a ways, and not a problem at all. Or when you're coming down for the 0600 breakfast after watching the Packer game till after midnight, okay, and I think it was the president of the High Plains Honor Society greeted me, may I take your bag, sir, okay, and that's the last time I saw it until my wife Anna had it in her hand when we met at the arena or whatever the place is called, and the kindness, of course, watching around D.C. is a combination of a bunch of civilians and the common language of thank you for your service. To me, it was a big difference to hear thank you for your service and welcome home. Okay, I would say things that really touched me were there was a lot of the bus ride that was spent going around Arlington National Cemetery, and when they said there's 400,000 crosses there, and we said to each other, one of those crosses could have been ours.
Yeah. Oh, very easily. Yes.
Very easily.
Yeah.
The look of the draw.
Absolutely
Okay.
is. Yeah.
Or at the Vietnam Memorial, where this one individual said that day, and as I understood his comment, he was in the fight, but he said that particular day we lost 42 men one day, okay? The North Vietnamese knew what was coming, and they had the North Vietnamese on this side, and we walked right into it, okay? At least that's the way he told the story. I knew two people who were from our grade school, one older, one younger, who got drafted pretty early. I would say that the disease incident rates, with Agent Orange, where we know prostate, there's a whole slew of diseases where the incident rates are higher than the normal population would lead you to believe, but prostate cancer and diabetes. And one of my grade school, he's passed away, he was a real quiet, smart kid, and he did a lot of the justification to the VA to qualify these, recognize that there were severe health consequences on exposure to Agent Orange. Okay, and I was really gratified when a friend was 20% disabled, and he fought to get 30% disability, and then he was hoping to get 40%, and then it came through that about a year or two ago, he got classified as 100%, okay? And good for him.
Yeah,
It was every single nickel.
Yeah.
Okay, and there's some things he can't get back, okay? And so on. So I think that these I think of this with such gratitude and how lucky we were, because in our flight, if I interpreted this data correctly, there are only 2 Purple Hearts in our most recent trip.
Oh, really? Oh, interesting. Okay.
And I wondered if maybe some of the people who had spent more time out in the jungle had already gone, okay, or they can't go, or they're no longer with us,
Right.
okay? But most of the people that I talked to they were in Thailand, or they had a supply job, or were Vietnam era, like I was, but not Vietnam, okay? And I got so much more out of the military than I would say I sacrificed. And I would say that's not the case with so many people, because maybe they came back in a body bag, maybe they have had, significant health issues develop. Guys in our grade school class, I mean, they're gone. I mean, they might have lived till their 50s or something.
Yeah. Well, I definitely have to step back and clarify, though. It was a crapshoot that very easily could have been you. You could have been in that situation.
Absolutely.
It just,
I was a medical corpsman.
yeah. Very easily could have been out in the jungle taking care of those guys, and absolutely, yeah.
And being shot at. I remember dreams of, stepping on a landmine, and I said, I was just so lucky, but the war was winding down to some extent. It didn't, it was past peak, okay? And then we still, at that time, we had about 300,000 people in Western Europe, okay?
Well, I mean, that's another thing, too, that, even though the guys in the jungle were taking probably the brunt of it, you were guarding the back door. The Russians were trying to figure out, okay, they're preoccupied with Vietnam. Let's go through the pass, and so.
Yeah. And so the support services, and in that case, as a medical corpsman, you're dealing with these smaller bases, but they had GIs, and then they had families,
Right.
So, you didn't have families in Vietnam for the most part, but you certainly had families in Germany. There were typically 3-year deployments, okay, and people obviously brought their wives and children along, and there were the schools and all that business that were part of it. So the bases were 4,000 soldiers, but there were also civilians and so forth.
Sure. Yeah.
It wasn't the medical intensity that an emergency room was. Last night, we were at, some of the people on the street are emergency medical physicians, and they were talking about their experiences, over decades, okay? And it was pretty easy to relate to. Yes, I didn't do it for decades. I did it for months. But it was interesting, hearing how they got worn out.
Yeah. Well, Jim, as we start to wind down this interview, is there anything I didn't ask you that you wanted to talk about? Any other stories that have floated to the top as we've been sitting here talking? Or do you think I know we probably only got the tip of the iceberg of your story, but do you think we've got a pretty good, well-rounded version of it, or anything else that you wanted to talk about before we start to wind down?
I got more out of it than a huge percentage. I mean, we still get all the discounts and all that, but I mean, the medical training, okay, that I got, I didn't realize it, but I mean, I remember this one doctor in particular coming up and said, have you ever thought of medical school?
Really? Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that he could appreciate, what I could bring. I mean, I loved it. There were you know, the saying, never volunteer in the Army. I volunteered for extra shifts, okay?
Really?
Okay? I mean, in complete violation of everything you've ever learned from day one in the Army, okay? But I thought it was exciting. I thought it was educational. I liked it. And one of the things that I really liked about my career was what was continuing to, you know, you never get to the end of the line in terms of what you can learn medically. And now I would say I continue to carry that curiosity in a different way because so many of my friends are getting older, you know, and family is getting older, and I will go and we just see you find these things in bunches, but right now there's more atrial fibrillation incidents of people, you know, relatives and friends. And so I went and researched this to some extent, and then one of my emergency room friends, doctor up the street, he and I went for a long walk the other day, and I wanted to get his knowledge about AFib, okay, and how he said it is not as black and white as someone with blood pressure, systolic blood pressure of 160, and saying, well, no, it's different with AFib. And I always have been attracted to that, okay? And I never thought of myself in a clinical capacity, but they put me there, and you know, it was absolutely beneficial, and these different roles in my career, we, you know, made a good living out of it, okay? We're financially secure, and I'm grateful. I was grateful for the travel. I was grateful for the finance. And I said, but the time when I had the most money I ever had in my life was when I was making $91 as a month as a private, because then I had money.
Outstanding. Well, we'll start to wind down this interview. I want to thank you for sitting down to tell a fascinating story, but as well, I want to thank you for your service to our country.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you very, very much.